Okay, so you can start it now.
Good morning, everyone. We are Team 11, and our topic is contract problems. Without any further ado, let's get into our topic. So, Krishna will start by explaining what contracts and construction contracts are and the importance of construction contracts. Over to Krishna. Krishna, can you unmute and speak?
Audible, ma'am?
Yeah, you're audible.
Ma'am, this is Krishna. My roll number is 103119057. Ma'am. Introduction to contract. A contract is a legally binding document between at least two parties that defines the grounds and the rights, duties of the properties of an agreement. A contract is a legally enforceable because it meets the requirement and approval of the law. A contract is typically involves the exchange of goods, service, monies, and the promise of any of those. Next slide. Introduction to construction contract. A construction contract is a mutual or legally binding agreement between two parties based on policies and conditions recorded in document form. The two parties involved are one or more property owners and one or more contractors. The owner, often referred to as the employees or the client, has full authority to dictate what types of contracts should be used for a specific development to be constructed and to set out the legally binding terms and conditions in a contractual agreement. Next slide. Importance of construction contract. Construction contract is an important document as it outlines the scope of work, risks, duties, and legal rights of both contractor and the owner. Any construction contract requires careful thoughts, negotiations, and draftings because, in addition to deepening the relationship between the parties, it provides certainty to the project, allocates risk, and provides mechanisms to mitigate risk. From a relatively simple home renovation to a large infrastructure project, parties usually enter into some form of written construction contract. Next slide. Not all contracts set the foundation for a project success. When issues such as liability, risk, allocation, and disputes are not clearly defined and explained in a contract, it can lead to excess cost. Unfair contract with poorly written clauses and project cost up to 20%, affecting the profitability and efficiency on a project. So clearly, construction contract is the main tool that defines the relationship between an owner and its general contractor or construction manager. Next topic on contract problem will be explained by the Kirti Vasan.
I am Kirti Vasan, roll number 103-103-11-9053. We are going to see a topic about contract problem. A contractual problem occurs when parties have conflicting interpretation over the terms of contract, and if one party seeks specific performance or damage or both from the other parties. It is usually preferable to engage in dispute resolution without court action whenever it is possible. If the agreement is not mutual, it may be challenged in court. Contract problems usually occur when a party breaches the contract, which means they do not do what they have promised to do in the agreement. A breach may occur not only when the terms of the contract are not performed at all, but also when they are not done in the accordance with the specific or indicated, or when they are not completed on time. Example, a material breach in which one party does not perform his or her duty, and as a result the contract irreparable. The party affected by this breach can sue the party who has breached the contract for damages. Next slide. Mostly face contract problems and their solution. The first one is lack of clarity. Without clear objectives, contract became daunting and both parties are at risk of signing without being entirely sure of everything in the agreement. Clarification to be made all in one place, helping to review process go much more quickly and optimizing communication between the parties. The next one is level of involvement. When drafting a document or an agreement, one party can internally edit and approve before sharing to the another third party, ensuring the terms and conditions. Next slide. Another one is protracted negotiation. Extended negotiation can be another complication of contract. Miscommunication in the creation process can mean more time until the document is ready, which ultimately leads to delayed revenue, longer lead times, competitive exposure, and potential loss of money for both parties. The solution for this is each person has the ability to view the document made by the specific party and comment on the particular section of the contract. Next, focus on the wrong term and risk. When reviewing a contract, it can be easy to narrow and focus on specific terms and risk within a contract without stepping back to see the whole picture. The solution for this, allowing multiple people to access the document so they can know about the issues and they can elevate these issues. Next slide. Handoff gaps. Once a contract is signed, the handoff from the team who manages the deal to the implementation team can be difficult and full of communication gap. The solution of this, the transparency provided by the manager enhances the ease with which information can be shared, allowed for any easy way to keep the implementation team involved from the beginning. And the next will be continued by Kritika.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kritika. I'm going to continue with the topic mostly faced contract problems and their solutions. Misunderstanding. Misunderstanding is another common issue with contracts, the misunderstanding of elements within the documents themselves. That is, a misunderstanding among parties regarding their respective rights and obligations under a contract is often the cause of the problem. Contracts typically start with legal team drafting them, which means that once handed off, they can be difficult for anyone without the legal knowledge to understand. The solution to the problem is using a digital platform. Each party can execute a drafting style and structure that makes sense to them. Ensuring a proper understanding of the agreement each party is entering before the documents are signed. This is much easier for legal team to manage. Additionally, other teams are able to have quicker and easier access to the legal team's knowledge through the instantaneous nature of the platform. Next slide. Lack of flexibility. The lack of flexibility and efficient mechanism for performance management can be a major roadblock. Rather than deal proactively with alternatives to the contract, the parties involved often wait until something goes wrong. The solution to the problem is shifting to digital contract management provides an open, transparent, and easy to use platform which helps facilitate a way to avoid this lack of flexibility and communication. The ability to adjust and adapt to any situation, time, or more or mode of communication is much simpler when all parts of the process are managed in the cloud. Limited technology resources. A major hurdle for the contract management has been the limited use of technology, resulting in the loss of efficiency and quality in both performance and analysis. Next slide, please. The problem can be solved by using a contract life cycle management platform completely eliminates this inefficiency by connecting all people, processes, and documents in a single location from the rise of e-signature tools to the current full lifecycle platforms that are available managing the contracts in a connected way that matches the pace of the rest of business in much easier. Poor governance and post-award process. Another issue with many current contract management process is poor governance and post-award process. Often there are inadequate resources within an organization to properly maintain and follow up on specific terms and requirements of contract to ensure that agreements are met and both parties collaborate efficiently. Implementing technology to help manage the terms throughout the entire life cycle will help each party involved to be fully connected and receive updates on the status, deadlines, and renewals for contracts. The problem can be solved by using a contract lifecycle management platform, eliminates these pitfalls. It offers a single place in which one can draft, negotiate, sign, and execute their contracts. Contract technology should be simple to use, promoting effective communication by all parties involved and inhibiting a chance for risk or error. That's all from my side. Over to Maitri.
Good morning. This is Maitri again. So now let us look at the construction contract problem and the ways to be solved. The first one is uncertain. The first one is being uncertain whether contract is a fixed price contract or a cost plus contract. So a fixed price contract is a type of agreement where a predetermined value doesn't change throughout the project, regardless of the time spent on the job or materials purchased. So in a fixed price contract, the contractor prepares a quote by taking the scope of work into major consideration, and he presents this quote to the owner and general contractor. Once they agree on how much the project will cost, they sign the contract stating the contractor will perform the work for that amount. Whereas a cost plus contract is an agreement to reimburse a company an estimated amount plus a specific amount of profit, usually which is a percentage of the contractor's full price. So these estimates are typically based on the sum of the subcontractor pricing, contingency, and self-performed work or general conditions work, and a percentage markup for overhead and profit. Often it is unclear from the context where the agreement is whether the agreement is fixed or cost plus. So this type of uncertainty can lead to significant dispute if the project costs significantly more or less to execute that than the agreed amount. So a simple solution for this is this issue can be easily avoided. This issue can be easily avoided if the parties enter into an appropriate contract rather than the owner signing back the estimate submitted by the contractor or issuing a purchase order, since even the shortest form of construction contract would typically be clear on this point. Next one is incorrect application of law. So the parties often either mistakenly think that they can completely contract out the legislation. So they attempt to deviate from how the legislation applies to the project, such as changing the holdback percentages or lien periods, or they attempt to conform to the terms of the applicable legislation but get it wrong. So this most frequently arises when either of the parties decide to use a standard form of contract from another jurisdiction. Example, US jurisdiction permits lien waivers, but they are not enforceable in Canadian jurisdiction, or whether they decide to avoid the application of lien legislation. For example, a contractor and an owner might agree contractually to waive its right to lien in exchange for no holdback. But if things go badly and the contractor feels it's owed money, then there is little that then owner can do to stop it from filing a lien. So this issue can be prevented by using an appropriate form of contract which correctly contemplates all the applicable legislative requirements and not seeking to deviate from any requirements of the lien legislation without clear confirmation, and this is permeable under the relevant act. Moving on to next problem, that is excessive upfront payment by owners. Uh, in response to contractors' requests, owners often agree to make substantial down payments in order to both mitigate the contractor's risk of not being paid by the owner and reduce the working capital requirement for the project, and thus reduce the cost of the owner. So this poses a twofold risk. This poses a twofold risk for the owner. That is, first one is that the owner takes on the contractor's credit risk by advancing money even before receiving the goods and services. And the second is, in case of any breach of the contract or unsatisfactory performance by the contractor, the owner will not have any funds to set off against and may have to chase the contractor to recover any funds owed. So a solution to this is owners can mitigate this risk by reducing the amount of any down payment to the extent possible. And in circumstances where the owner is making a down payment, they should consider procuring security in the form of a letter of credit, a parent company guarantee, or bonding from the contractor to mitigate risk. And where upfront payments are made, it should be clear how they'll be applied, whether to the first milestones, the final milestones, or throughout the project. The sooner the upfront payment is applied against the milestone, the less risk there is associated with that down payment for the owner. Now, moving on to fourth problem, that is unseen consequences for delay. Projects often face delays for a number of reasons, and yet construction contracts often either do not provide express remedies for delays such as liquidated damages, or they contain inconsistent provisions setting out the consequences for delay. For example, in some cases there will be liquidated damages in which the parties agree is a genuine pre-estimate of the harm suffered by the owner resulting from the delay, but the clause will go on to provide that if the owner doesn't actually suffer any harm, no liquidated damages are payable. So while both of these are workable approaches on their own, when combined, it changes the nature of the liquidated damages from a pre-estimate of damages to a cap possible damages. So when negotiating a contract, the party should always specifically turn mind to what should happen if the contractor is late in delivering. So that is, are they liable for liquidated damages? Are they sold to exclusive remedy? Are there any caps or limitations on the liquidated damages? Are they still the owner's sole and exclusive remedy for the delay, even if the cap is reached? So, where there are liquidated damages and the cap is exclusive, and a cap that is exclusive, and the cap is that is expressed as a percentage of the contract price, owners should divide the cap by the daily rate or other time period to determine how many days it would take to reach the cap and understand what it might mean in the context of the particular project. So, liquidated damages are often disliked by the contractors and thought as owner-friendly term, but in fact, they cut both ways. So, in some circumstances, without a pre-agreed liquidated amount of caps, the contractor would actually be exposed to greater damages for the breach of contract for failing to achieve substantial performance by the guaranteed date relative to what they might have agreed as a liquidated damage. Moving on to the next one, that is incomplete warranty provisions. So a warranty is a contractual obligation to remedy defects in work which becomes apparent after handover of the project to the owner. Typically, warranty clauses stipulate the duration of warranty, but sometimes they are written in a short form without specifying other key elements of the warranty terms, such as whether the contractor has the obligation to remove and replace the defective part, responsibilities for return shipping, and whether there is a further extended warranty on the warranty repair work. So in some cases, warranty might be listed as a 12-month warranty, but without specifying the time period, but without specifying the time period, it begins to run. Sometimes that might be obvious, but in other circumstances, it may be unclear if it runs from installation or the start of use. For example, appliances may be purchased for a household renovation project 6 months before the project is done and turned over to the owner. But if the appliance only has a 12-month warranty from delivery, then the owner might effectively only have 6 months of protection. So this can be avoided if the parties of a construction contract always consider the warranty carefully and understand what they expect to happen in the event of defects and whether the clause aligns with those expectations. That's all from my side. Now Hari Prasad will take over.
Good morning, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. Proceed.
Good morning, everyone. This is Hari Prasad. Let's look at some problems in construction contracts. So first thing is your templates are constantly changing or getting lost. So let me explain what is the problem is. When an organization scatters templates in a number of locations, inconsistency and risk will thrive. Standard templates can quickly deviate, slow down business process as teams search for the latest version of template, try to reinvent them as best they can. So what actually here happening is there is a lot of time consumption is happening. So it might be effect on the delay of for their contract. So it can cost their time. The cost is we all know that cost is directly proportional to the money. It will affect on our in terms of our income also. So how to solve these types of problem? So the solution is contract management system should allow users to automatically build contract using pre-approved terms and conditions, and with the help of standard templates to make the contract creation process faster, easier, and more consistent. And coming to the next problem, you run into inconsistent formats, languages, and terms. So here, creating contracts manually is extremely time consuming and introducing unnecessary risk and slows down the entire contracting process due to wide disparity in formats, terms, and languages. So these type of problems can be solved by choose a contract management system that can integrate seamlessly with programs our team already by using document creation such as Microsoft Word. More robust system may also allow our team to automatically build contract using legal pre-approved terms and conditions. And if the standard clauses change, a clause library manage of copies for tracking revision against specific contract instances. Coming to next problem that we generally face is you can't keep track stages of each contract. So it is really hectic to track each contract at every stage. So what is the problem is when multiple versions of contracts are saved in various locations and shared across email threads as the attachment for redlining and approvals, it is common to lose the track of current stage and version of contract. So these type of problems can be solved with the help of contract management solution. With Salesforce Investigating, provide your sales team with the ability to track the entire contract process directly within Salesforce. If there is ever question about a contract, it is easy to track exactly those what, when, and by whom issues. Coming to our next problem, that is overlook obligations and major milestones. So in this one, if contracts are not carefully tracked across the entire organization during their complete life cycle, commitments, compliments, and requirements, potential discounts, and other targets can easily get overlooked. So to solve these sort of problems, the contract management system should produce customized alerts regarding contract expires, making organization aware of upcoming renewals and other milestones. As a result, contracts are never renewed unintentionally and obligations are never ignored. And one more thing, the problem is email is slowing your contracting process down significantly. So if an organization is sending drafts of contract to review manually via email, this is not only slow, but also risky since it is nearly impossible to track its progress, including knowing where a contract is in process or not, and how long it's going to take. So for this one, we need to have some solution, and the solution is with the contract management system that integrates your with process and system. You can send contracts directly from Salesforce in Microsoft Word format for redlining and then compare versions and clarify the changes directly in Salesforce to ensure accurate data and complete contract history. Yeah. So coming to the next problem is construction contracts allocate risk to control them. So here construction contracts are about ensuring the work is performed or reducing risk. This is why it's important to note that the risk assigned to which party. It instills accountability. An owner or an architect is not likely to take any injury risk. So most likely they will try to assign that contractor or subordinate. Many contractors, when the risk is shifted to them, they will add contingency to bid price, so they have partially covered something happens. So actually they are here, they are just escaping they are escaping from the risk, and owners are escaping, and they are just are making their work to do from contractors or subcontractors. So coming to the next problem is that is allocating risk through indemnity provisions. So indemnity provisions are another way of allocating risk. Indemnity is the security or protection against losses and financial burdens. These provisions are important in construction contracts because they obligate one party to pay for the losses incurred by another party. Sometimes they never even require one party to defend another party. For example, a subcontractor might be financially responsible for bodily injury or property damage claims because of negligence. If a worker accidentally breaks something on the site, the subordinate could be financially responsible for the damage. However, if the site is full of hazardous waste, the owner would be responsible for any bodily injury or illness, because this is a risk that contractor or subcontractor can't control. Yeah, coming to insurance is how to minimize risk and loss. So here we need to minimize risk and loss. So insurance can minimize risk and loss in the construction contracts. Some owners require contracts and subcontractors to have insurance to cover their potential issues. There are variety of insurance options for the contractors and subcontractors to help. So we will be seeing here three insurance: liability insurance, builder risk insurance, and natural disaster insurance. So first, liability insurance is it covers injuries, accidents, and property damage that happens on the job. And coming to the second one, that is builder risk insurance, it pays for the damages up to the limit, which could be the total completed value for the structure or any other figure. And coming to natural disaster insurance, whether it can be a big factor in construction, and same projects can be benefit from flood, fire, or any other natural disasters. Next slide, please. This is also common problem might used to be seen in every construction contract. So this is surety bond. The surety bond works to promise owners that a contractor or subcontractor will complete the construction contract. It is designed to prevent the loss rather than accompanying an inassured personals or unforeseen circumstances. They will protect owners against contractor default when it happens. It can be established credit for the contractors. There are many different types of surety bonds, but most of them three are more common to look at them. The first thing is bid bonds, and second one is performance bond, and third one is payment bond. So the bid bond is assure a bid with submitting in good and faith can provide services outline their proposals. And the performance bond is a performance bond protects an owner from financial loss if a contractor or subcontractor can't perform their duties. Coming to payment bond, this is one assures that the contractor will pay their workers and subcontractors and suppliers. So surety bonds can help contractors to get their jobs because there is a third party guaranteeing the work, and some owners won't work with the people unless they have some sort of bond. The bonds can help contractor and subcontractor as well because the workers are guaranteed wages and more likely to be willing to work with the contractor. Surety bonds will also help contractors because it gives them a line of credit they can use in emergencies when immediate cash is needed. So this is all from my side. Handing over this to Kritika. Thank you.
This is Kritika here again. If we wish to minimize the likelihood of any problem arising, we need to start with the contract itself. Proper planning will protect everyone from overrun cost and unfair liability. Every party with a stake in a project should be included in the contract. Writing a clause that all parties must regularly report on their insurance status. By doing this, everyone can be sure that no coverage ends before completion. Smart contracts. These are legal agreements use blockchain technology to implement their terms through code. This means that the agreed terms are always adhered to and on-site technology can track project progress, works hours, weather condition, and supply arrivals. This could make the current form of construction contracts obsolete. Next slide. However, if a contract issue arises once work is already underway, then one or more of these should be put in contract. Negotiation. Probably the simplest of the options available to you, negotiations will involve the parties attempting to reach a satisfactory resolution between themselves. However, this isn't possible and you may need to escalate. Next, mediation. Having a neutral third party help solve your dispute can
Kritika, sorry for the interruption. Can you make it a little faster?
it can provide a fair and effective solution to your construction contract issues. Next is expert determination. If you don't like to go down the mediation route, but you need someone who's a specialist in your field, you want expert determination. This works in exactly the same way as mediation and can solve your time and money and save you time and money in the long run.
Kritika, can you make it faster?
Yes, ma'am. And then adjudication. You don't always have to come to end decision yourself. With adjudication, a party will reach a resolution which can then be enforced in a court. Arbitration. To take adjudication to the next level, you're looking at arbitration. Here, a neutral third party with relevant experience can legally binding depending on where you are. While expensive construction contract issues can maybe sorted in a timely manner. Litigation. If all other attempts have failed, it's time for litigation. Involving a trial and legally binding results, it's thorough and but expensive. In majority of cases, litigation is a last resort. We can minimize the disputes within a project to very low number of by just increasing the flow of communication and by being careful and responsible. Thank you.
Okay. So team 11, this was a detailed presentation where you have covered the entire contract problems, like starting from like what if the time delayed, like time of completion is getting delayed. So what are the problems and how you're going to overcome it, as well as your resources, risk allocations based upon the cost, insurance and bonds. So you have made a full to the plate. You have completed the entire contract problems, like from the materials till the overall finally ending up with your costs. So it was a very good presentation. And team 12, students, do you have any doubts on this presentation? Any doubts? Shall we move on to the next team?
Yes,
Team
ma'am.
12. Yeah, team 12.
Yes, ma'am.
We have only 20 minutes left. Will you be able to complete it in the next 20 minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so then you can start sharing your screen.
Good morning, everyone. We are Team 12 and we're going to be presenting the topic arbitration and its legal requirements. My name is Varshni and my roll number is 60. I'll be explaining what is arbitration and some of the key features of arbitration. So, arbitration is essentially a way to resolve dispute. So, let's say there are two parties and a dispute has arisen between the two, and they would like to resolve it, but they do not want to take the conventional route of a court proceeding to seek justice, so they adopt an alternate mechanism called arbitration. So, in an arbitration, the dispute will be resolved by a third person called arbitrator, and an arbitrator is a neutral third party who's expected to make a decision that is beneficial to all parties, which may be two or more, and the decision is expected to be free from any bias and be driven only by facts and observation. The final decision made by the arbitrator is called an arbitration award, which is legally binding on all parties of the hearing. And yeah, shown here are some of the key features of arbitration. The first feature is that arbitration is consensual. An arbitral proceeding can take place only if both parties of the dispute have agreed to it, and generally parties insert an arbitration clause in the contract for future disputes arising from the performance or non-performance of contractual obligations. A pre-existing dispute can also be referred to as an arbitration if both parties or how many other parties disagree to it. This is called a submission agreement. The second feature is that parties choose the arbitrator. Unlike litigation or mediation, where the parties do not have a say on who the jury or judge should be, in an arbitration, the parties can choose their arbitrators under the Indian Arbitration Act. They can choose a sole arbitrator. However, the number of arbitrators is usually an odd number. This is again to prevent any bias from being exhibited in the final decision. The next feature is that arbitration is neutral. Apart from selecting neutral persons as arbitrators, the parties can also choose other important elements of an arbitral proceeding, such as the law applicable, the language in which the proceedings should be, the venue of arbitration proceedings. All of these again ensure that no single party enjoys an undue advantage. And this next feature is that arbitration is a confidential procedure. Absolute privacy is maintained in the process, and apart from the parties and the arbitrator, no one has any idea of any happenings in the process, and sharing of any information or document is strictly prohibited outside of the parties and the arbitrator. Finality of the arbitral award. The decision of the arbitral tribunal, that is the group of arbitrators that make the arbitration award, is final and easy to enforce. Speedy process. The entire process of arbitration is quicker and less complicated than a litigation or a court proceeding. No appeal rights. As mentioned before, since the arbitral award is legally binding on all parties of the hearing, there is no appeal right to any of the parties in an arbitration proceeding. That's it from me. Over to Kshitij.
Thank you, Varshini. Hi, everyone. I am Kshitij Verma. I am here to discuss arbitration process. Before that, let's see who can become an arbitrator. It is possible for anyone to become an arbitrator. It is common for arbitrators to come from legal profession, but they may also come from a technical profession related to the subject in dispute. For example, an architect. Parties in dispute will often try and appoint an arbitrator who has particular experience relevant to their case. The process of arbitration. Stage 1. Initiating the arbitration. An arbitration case begins when one party submits a request that a dispute be referred to arbitration. The other party, the respondent, is notified and a deadline is set for a response. Stage 2. Appointment of arbitrator. Arbitrator may or may not be mentioned in a contract, depending on the decision of the two parties. Arbitrators can be appointed either by the disputing parties directly, a combination of the parties, that is, one party appoints one arbitrator, the other party appoints another, and both arbitrators appoint a third. An external party, example the court, or an individual body nominated by the parties such as professional institution. Stage 3. Preliminary hearing. The arbitrator conducts a preliminary hearing with the parties to discuss the issues in the case and procedural matters such as witnesses, depositions, sharing information, and other matters. Stage 4. Statement of claim and response. The claimant provides a statement of their claim in which they summarize the matters in dispute and the remedy they are seeking. The alleged facts are provided but not the evidence they believe proves those facts. The respondent then provides a statement of response in which they concede or deny the claim made against them. Stage 5. Interchange of evidence. The written evidence is exchanged between the parties and provided to the arbitrator for review. Stage 6. Hearing. The hearing is a meeting held where evidence and witness statements are presented to the arbitrator for questioning or clarification. The hearing begins with the arbitrator swearing in the parties and any witness who will testify. It is not as formal as a litigation hearing, although the basic procedure is same in that both the sides have opportunity to present their case and listen to the others. At the end of the hearing, both sides can present the arbitrator with a summary of their evidence and laws that they deem applicable. The arbitrator then retires to consider the award. Stage 7. Arbitration award. Once they have considered all the information and evidence, the arbitrator will make a decision and dictate the award. The decision will be considered binding. There is generally a limited recourse for appeal, although the award is often reviewable by the courts. Thank you. Over to Krishna Yadav.
Thank you, Chitiz. Hello everyone, this is Krishna Yadav. Here I am going to discuss about potential outcomes of arbitrations. Here, in the process of arbitration, a party can either win, toss, win, lose, or cease the arbitration proceedings, and their results are mainly come with some utility gains and losses. Let's discuss these points in the given figure below. Here, when a person wins the arbitrations, their utility gain will be they'll receive the allocated amount of settlement, and also they'll face some utility loss in the form of direct and indirect costs. Direct costs in the sense such as arbitration fees and other expenses, and direct costs such as the loss of potential business with the opponent. Similarly, if the person loses the arbitrations, their utility loss will be they will not receive the allocated amount of settlement, and also they face direct and indirect costs. And however, they also gain some utility gain if they were able to delay consequences, because at this same agreement the former court would cost them a lot of time and money. Now if the arbitration ceases to exist, their utility gain will be higher settlement amount only when if one party was able to influence the opponent, and also they have utility loss. However, the cost of settlements are still faced, and there is a regret of not being able to meet the originally offered settlement. Next slide, please. These are the explanation of above figure mentioned above. Next slide, please. Now we move to the legal requirements of arbitrations. Here we'll discuss about the legal requirement arbitration by Central Government Act Section 7 in the Arbitrations and Conciliation Act 1996. Here, before discussing about the requirements, let's know what is arbitration agreement. Arbitration agreement is the agreement where we need to submit present or future dispute to arbitration, and this generic concept comprises two basic types. One is arbitration clause and submission requirement. Arbitration clause is a clause in a contract by which the parties to a contract undertake to submit the arbitration the dispute that may arise in relation to that contract, whereas submission agreement is an agreement by which parties to a dispute that has already arisen submit the dispute to arbitrations. Now the requirements of legal requirements are: an arbitration agreement may be in the form of arbitration clauses in a contract or in the form of separate agreement. An arbitration agreement is in writing if it is contained in two ways. One is by a document signed by the parties, another way is exchange of letter, telex, telegrams, and other means of telecommunication which provide a record of the agreement. Now the reference in a contract to a document containing an arbitration clause constitutes to an arbitration agreement if the contract is in writing and the reference such as to make the arbitration clause part of the contract. Over to Chitij.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kshitij and my roll number is 61, and I'll explain about the different types of arbitration. We can classify arbitration on the basis of willingness of parties, or on the basis of the jurisdiction, or on the basis of the procedures and rules abiding the arbitration process. First, we look at the different types of arbitration on the basis of willingness. First, we have voluntary arbitration. In voluntary arbitration, the sides involved agree on their own to use an outside party like an arbitration attorney to help settle their differences. No contract or law is required in this action. The parties themselves volunteer to come to a settlement through an arbitration machinery. The essential element in voluntary arbitration is the voluntary submission of dispute to an arbitrator. Deciding to use this arbitration can save money and time. If the matter is personal, voluntary arbitration can be a viable option. Next, we have compulsory arbitration. Compulsory arbitration is a non-binding dispute resolution process in which one or more arbitrators hear the arguments, weigh evidences, and then they issue a non-binding judgment after the hearing. Institute like courts makes decisions here. Decisions are made using applied legal standards. Here, the parties are required to accept arbitration without any willingness on their part. Usually, compulsory arbitration happens when either the parties fail to arrive at a settlement by voluntary method or when there is a national emergency. Next up, we look at the different types of arbitration on the basis of jurisdiction. First is domestic arbitration. Domestic arbitration takes place in a nation when arbitration proceedings, the subject matter of the contract, and the merit of the dispute, they are all governed by that particular nation's law. When the cause of the action of the dispute arises wholly in that particular nation, and the dispute is settled by that nation's law, then it is called as a domestic arbitration. When we define domestic arbitration for India, the essential requirements are that the arbitration should take place in India. Secondly, the subject matter of the contract should be based on India. And the most important, the merit of the dispute and the procedure of arbitration is all governed by Indian law. Next, we look at international arbitration. International arbitration can take place either within India or outside India. The essential requirement is the indulgence of ingredients of foreign origin relating to the parties or the subject matter of the dispute. The law applicable to the conduct of arbitration and the merits of the dispute may be Indian law or foreign law. That depends upon the type of contract, the type of dispute, or the rules of conflict of law. Let's take an example. If an American company comes to India to establish itself here and it buys land for construction, now, during the construction process, there might be some dispute between the company and the construction company. Then, if they settle this dispute through arbitration process, then this type of arbitration can be termed as international arbitration because of its indulgence of foreign origin, that is the American company, and though the law that will be used in this case will be Indian law. Next, we look at the different types of arbitration on the basis of procedures and the rules. First, we have institutional arbitration. And institutional arbitration is one where a specialized institution is appointed and that institute takes on the role of administering the arbitration process. Each institution has its own set of rules upon which it works. So depending upon these rules, the particular institute provides a framework such as timeline for filing of documents or procedures for making applications. Arbitrators are selected either by the institute or by the appellant or respondent. One such institute in construction business is Construction Industry Arbitration Council, briefly called CIAC. The advantage of institutional arbitration is that the administrative assistance is given by the institute. But its disadvantage can be that the institution will charge a percentage of the fee as the sum of fee, which can be substantial in large disputes. Next up, we have ad hoc arbitration. Unlike the institutional arbitration, ad hoc arbitration is one that is not administered by any institution. Parties themselves decide upon all the rules of the arbitration, such as appointment of the arbitrator, applicable rules, or the timetable for filing of various documents. The advantage of ad hoc arbitration is that the disputing parties have the flexibility of having the rules of arbitration according to their own wish. But sometimes it might backfire because of the absence of any institute to take care of the arbitration process. Therefore, an ad hoc arbitration can also be turned into an institutional arbitration later. Last, we have fast track arbitration. In fast track arbitration process, the process is not lengthy and tedious like other processes can be, and thus this process of arbitration helps in fast decision making of disputes, ultimately saving lots of time. Its biggest advantage is that the arbitration procedure consumes less time and upholds the simplicity of the decision, which is originally the prime purpose of such arbitration. Next, Bhavya will explain the advantages and disadvantages of arbitration.
Good morning all, I'm Bhavya, roll number 63. We have pros and cons for arbitration. The major advantage of an arbitration is flexibility in decision making and its efficiency. Arbitration is usually faster than court proceedings, so it is quicker than litigation process. Usually, arbitration process involves two parties and an arbitrator, whereas the court system has many other people listening to the issues. So comparatively, arbitration is more private and confidential. Better coordination between the parties. It is a simple process and resolves the disputes faster. So there is a better understanding and coordination between the parties. It's very effective and efficient as well. Subject matter expert. So the parties can choose arbitrator with expertise in specific subject related to the disputes. Arbitration is one of the easy mode of enforcement for the parties to resolve the disputes. So it is one of the main reason why parties usually choose arbitrator. Control over the process and opportunity to select arbitrator. As we have seen earlier, parties have the right to choose their arbitrator. Simple procedure, option to choose language, and seat of arbitration. The place or venue is a choice of convenience for both the parties. Few disadvantages of arbitration are no precedents are followed, which means the arbitrators are not required to follow any prior precedents, so the judgment may not be same for similar sort of cases. Final and binding on the parties, which says that all decisions made by the arbitrator are legally binding. It is quite difficult to appeal in arbitration procedure, whereas in judiciary, we have a chance to appeal for higher courts. So there is a very limited scope for appeals. Not all cases can be referred to arbitration. There are few cases which cannot be referred to arbitration, like, for example, criminal offenses, matrimonial disputes, etc. This is a real arbitration case. So the parties involved are Indian Construction Council and Indore Municipal Corporation. The dispute was regarding the construction of spillway across river, and the Indian Construction Corporation was given the contract of this. As they failed to complete it in stipulated time, the amount promised for them for the work was not completely given. As a result, they selected arbitrator and settled their dispute. The changing landscape of construction arbitration. In the construction sector, arbitration process is very crucial because of the complexity of people involved in it. Thus, arbitration process is infrastructurally developing nations like India needs to be much simple and easy. Recent decisions made by Indian judiciary like arbitrator fees agreed between parties will prevail over the schedule under the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996. The fact that India is moving towards the goal of being an international arbitrational hub to ensure a speedy and neutral dispute resolution process. Thank you. We hope this is informative.
Yes, very good team, 12 members. You have covered the entire topics of arbitration, its types, advantages, disadvantages, and implementation of arbitration in today's field. And students, do you have any doubt in this? It was a very good presentation, team 12. Congratulations. Do you have any doubts? Students, do you have any doubts? Okay, so for Monday's class, I want all of you to join early for the class. And today, like people, only 36 of them have joined earlier. I told that I'll be giving only attendance for them. I excuse today from next class onwards. If the class is going to be at 9:30, please be on 9:30. If it's going to be at 11:30, in that case, I'll be giving some couple of minutes so that you may have to complete your previous class and join. For that situation alone, I'll give you some excuse, but I want all of you to be there on time while starting the presentation. Is that okay? And you have another one assignment left for 5 marks, right? Do you remember?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So tomorrow morning, I'll post a question in your Google Classroom. Tomorrow evening, I want you to complete and submit it. It will be like one problem related to either CPM or PERT. Is it okay? Only one problem. You have to complete and you have to upload it in the Google Classroom. Is it okay? I don't want anyone to work it and circulate among your friends. I don't want like that case. If you do it and if I found like you have circulated, then I'll put only 0 for you. Is it okay? This assignment for 5 marks, it's going to be a practice for you to work out your CPM PERT problems, not for helping out your friends. If you help out your friends today and finally in the grading, your friend will be greater than you. You should not come and ask me, ma'am, like I was the one who circulated the answer script, but he had scored more than me. I don't want any, queries or complaints like this. That's the reason I am asking not to circulate your answer papers, assignment papers, sorry. Is it okay? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Maitri, you can download, yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
You can download the attendance sheet and you can drop me a mail. Okay, thank you. Any doubts?